Welcome to the Speak Like a Leader podcast with John Bates. Welcome to the show. With me today is Cameron Hughes. And Cameron is somebody that, I didn't quite know what to think when I first looked at his website. But I'll tell you, the minute I talked to the guy, I had to get him on here. Thank you, Rob, for the introduction. Cameron Hughes is the author of King of Cheer. And I'm going to let him tell you more about what that means. But Cameron, I'm just really glad to have you here. I think you're a little bit of a departure from my usual guest. And I will start by just poking you in the ribs, if that's okay. I mean, you're essentially a glorified cheerleader who isn't even pretty. What can we learn from you?
Well, I think that you don't need pom-poms to cheer. That's what you can learn.
I think it's a really, really good point. And of course, I knew there would be a good answer to that.
Well, yeah, it's funny. When I was in student council running for president in university, and the guy running against me, he said, "Our school needs a leader, not a cheerleader." And those were right?
Yeah.
I was the crazy guy at school getting the crowd going. But behind getting the crowd going there's a deeper sense of purpose of wanting you to come on campus and go, I'm part of something special. I'm part of something bigger than me. And I feel connected to this community. And that's been my mission since, the mid days of high school when the spark lit me, which we can talk about later. But that's my thing. And it was so funny he said that. And I actually talked to him a while ago, the guy who said it. And he's like, I don't remember saying it like that, but I get what you were saying. The point being, I go to sport events to cheer people on. I go to events to get the best out of you in those moments. That's what I do. And, when you get that spark lit that we all need, it's amazing what happens, right?
It's so amazing. And that sentence is so great. Like, we don't need a cheerleader, we need a leader. But I think it's it's missing something. That's missing a really big point in my book. It's like, wait a minute. I think the best leaders are awesome cheerleaders, right?
100%. I mean, by the way, I won the election.
Yeah, good. Awesome. Congratulations.
But it's so true. It's like getting out of the way, but also being at the forefront saying, I believe in you. I'm supporting you, reaching out, like all these different things that leaders can do to, elevate their team, right? Ultimately, you're elevating your team, right?
Well, yes, absolutely. And, you have been I'm looking at the stats here. You've been to 1,500 plus events, 20 leagues, 8 hospital visits. Maybe we're going to talk about that later. 30 million fans. You have successfully layered and removed 23 shirts at once. You hand out an average of 130 shirts per game. The most you've ever done is 425, unless you've beaten it since that. But here's what I want to know. I want to know a story, maybe in the sports world or in this world of your career by the numbers. This is what I tell people. And I want you to tell me a story that illustrates this example. So I always tell people, I think one of the most important leadership skills is to be able to speak to people like they're great, no matter how they're being in the moment. And I've got to imagine there are times when that team that you're cheering for is down by a lot of points, right? But if we all just went home because, it's obvious they're going to lose, like that magical thing wouldn't have happened, right?
Yeah, there's a story in my book that I had a couple of different sports executives write me like a little paragraph, and a lot of them elaborated, ended up writing more. And then I ended up using the whole story, which was fascinating to get it from their perspective of the effect that I could have on the crowd. Whoa. So I was doing this game in a minor league town in British Columbia, Kamloops, British Columbia. They brought me in for this big playoff game. It was 5,500 people. Hockey's huge up in Canada. And they brought me in for this big playoff game. And within 6-7 minutes, they were down 4-0.
Which is
like,
kind of a lot in hockey. I used to play
a
hockey.
lot. And then next thing I know, I think they were down like maybe 5 by like midway through the first. I wanted to leave because, you know, you're private gone, right? You are checked out.
Yeah.
But what do you do when you're, I don't like the word JOB, but when you're literally your JOB is to get the crowd going, what do? You can't leave. You're not going to get paid by the end of the game.
Yeah.
I had to find a switch on my own. And how I've learned to do that is to get a fan or get a moment with a fan where they might not want to do it either, right? Because their energy is deflated as well. The whole building's deflated. The whole company, whatever happens, you know, whatever situation we're looking at. So I had to find a moment to get some energy going for myself and for the fans. You know, long story short, we pushed it. We pushed it 4-1, 4-2. They came back. They tied it at the end of the game, and they won in overtime.
Oh, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. That's a leadership lesson right there.
And Dave, the guy who wrote the letter, you know, and I didn't see it the way he had seen it because I was living it in a different way. He said I was responsible for at least a couple of goals, meaning the crowd. I got the crowd into such a frenzy once we created momentum. And I've never run big companies, but I've been part of a lot of big companies. And I can imagine when you're in momentum, you need to keep that momentum going, right?
Yes.
The crowd's behind you. The crowd's into it. Keep them going. What can you do to keep pushing them? And that's what I did that night. And I'll never forget it. It was an unbelievable feeling leaving that arena going, I played a little part, you know?
Yeah. You scored a couple goals and you weren't even on the ice.
Yeah, I can't even play hockey. I can't skate backwards, but hey.
Yeah. That's awesome. I mean, and that is exactly it. You know, that is exactly it. And I think that moment of, oh crap, we're down 5-0. How do I find this? And it's the leader's issue, right? How do I find this in myself? That's the first thing you had to do. And then how do I transfer this to them, you know? And it sounds to me like you looked out at the fans to find that thing in yourself, and then you gave it back to them, right?
100%. I mean, that's my whole thing is the energy you give is the energy you get. But what I say instead is the cheer you give is the cheer you get, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And I've lived by that. And now I'm expressing it more, having learned more, having experienced more. But at the end of the day, too, something I just thought of when I was listening to you talk about that is there's a lot of games where you go to on a Wednesday night where the fans just want to be entertained. They're not truly like this game I was at was a playoff game. It had serious implications, you know, like out. And I think in business, there's a lot more serious implications, right? There's like I said, your business is struggling or you've got momentum, like the different phases. So how to read your own crowd is also, I think, an important thing. How to read your business, how to read your culture. And I think that one thing a lot of people say, well, like, how have you sustained a 26-year career? Well, I've learned to read a crowd. And the teams know that when they bring me in, they trust me with it. And I think it's a really valuable thing that I've learned.
Yeah. Yeah. Will you tell us a little bit? Like, you know, I end up having a pretty cool job. And I was on a podcast one time and somebody asked me, how did you get such a cool job, Mr. Bates? You know, like you train the astronauts, right? And I thought about it for a second and I had to be really like, I was like, okay, well, here's how I did. I said, I just failed at everything else I did, which is pretty true.
Yeah.
And so I wonder, you know, Cameron, Mr. Hughes, you've got a pretty cool job. How did you get that job?
Well, yeah, I mean, it just was one of those moments where I was at a game in my hometown of Ottawa. Nobody was cheering. NHL game, 10,000 strangers. And my buddy brought me to the game. First period, no excitement. Second period, no excitement. Third period, I've had it. John, I'm actually mad, right? And everyone listening here, and you and I could come up with lots of different times where you've been in an event and you're wondering. I'm talking events from, you know, the corporate event where they've spent $500,000 to bring the sales team together, or your cousin's wedding, and it just needs a spark, right? It needs that moment that's going to change the tone, the vibe. So I'm at this game, nobody's cheering, they were losing, And I've had it. 8 minutes to go. The song "We Are Family" gets on, and I'm dead sober, by the way.
That's funny.
On my seat, and I start to dance like a lunatic. And I'm, now the joke is I'm a good bad dancer. I'm not a great dancer. I'm not the smoothest guy. I'm 6'4", big guy.
Yeah.
And I just start going for it. And I say to people, that moment in your life where you decide to truly own it. And I think we have a few of those moments where we truly decide to own it. And then it becomes a compounding sort of factor of your life. I just had to go for it, because I put myself out there. 10,000 people are looking at me, John, like, what are you on? Should we call the paramedics?
Right.
So I sit back down, the crowd cheers, there's a buzz. And then I tell people this because it's so important, I believe, is we've all had those singular moments where I did this, right? Those funny YouTube moments, those funny viral videos. And then the moment's over. You're done. The next whistle blows, 10,000 people turn around, stare at me, John, and they're like, come on, Big Red. Right? So what do? I couldn't run to the car. My seats were in the middle of the section. So I stood up, and as I stood up, the crowd's like, oh, my God, what's he doing? What's he doing? Oh, my God, he's going to do it. So I go to the aisle. And the reason I've had this accidental career performing at all those events and around the world is because I got up the second time. Had I just got up the first time, I wouldn't be talking to you.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Yep. I totally agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
So I'm dancing. I have no idea what I'm doing. And there's a 15-second clip of it, which is in the archives. And I'm going to keep dancing, and the crowd's coming with me. The place is going off the charts. Players are even watching this now going, what's going on up there? And the crowd's coming along. The whistle blows. Play resumes. Get a standing ovation. Go back to my seat. A guy from the team's there, and he's like, hey, we loved it. We want to bring you back. And I'm like, what do you want me to do? And he's like, just get the crowd going. I'm like, okay. And that was, 26 years ago and one pandemic later. I've been getting out.
It's so great. So Cameron, there's just so much to break down in there. And I want to just dive in there for a second. So number one, you went for it, right? And there are so many moments, I think, in life where there's an opportunity like that, right? And people feel that pull, that frustration, like that somebody should do something, right? Yeah, well, guess what? There ain't no somebody, right? Like the only somebody that's going to do anything if you're sitting there thinking somebody should do something is you, right?
Yeah, somebody is you. Exactly.
That's it, right? Yeah. So I love that. I love that because you had a complaint, which meant that you had a commitment and you actually went for it. That's awesome.
Which can I just add something with why you're saying this? You're making me realize, like, so I didn't set out to do that.
No.
Right? But and anyone who's listening, or any of your friends, my friends, everyone we know has had the moment of, do I do it? Should I do it? What if I do it? Right?
Yeah. Yep.
I think it's going to define your life.
Yeah. And Cameron, I've got to tell you real quick. I had the same moment, just different, about 11 years ago in 2009 when I was at the TED conference. You know, and I won't go into the whole story, but I went to TED in 2009 because of this guy named Benjamin Zander. I had seen his talk from the year before. I was so excited about it. Music and passion, classical music and passion. It doesn't sound like a great talk. It's the best talk ever. And I was so inspired. I knew I couldn't afford it. I knew they'd never let me in, but I applied anyway. And I ended up at TED. And in that first moment, I was at this thing called TED Active, which was a satellite event that was put on by TED2, run by the woman who chooses the speakers. It was fabulous. But we were out in the desert in Palm Springs while they were actually at TED in Long Beach. So we were watching like a live feed, right? Satellite feed. And Benjamin Zander came out. He started to talk. He was talking about singing happy birthday to Ted because it was their 25th birthday, right? And he set it all up. And right as he was about to start to do it, blue screen of death. The signal was gone. all of a sudden we felt like a bunch of dorks sitting alone in the desert who thought they were at TED for a minute, And I sat there and I thought, no, this is Ben, right? I'm not going to let this happen. And then my monkey mind said, oh, dude, you're always the guy that jumps up and does something. You should just shut up and sit down. They're going to throw you out. So I said, okay. I'll count to 10, 1,000. And if nobody else does anything, I'm not going to let this go down in flames, right? Because I know where he was going and I'm going to jump up, right? So I counted to 10, 1,000. No one had done anything. So I jumped up, turned around, 500 people now looks like 5,000 people. And I went for it. And right when I finished, we all sang happy birthday to Ted and did what he was going to do. When I finished and didn't know exactly what to do next, on came the feed. I sat down and then everybody at TED, this was not my plan, right? I just didn't want to see Ben's thing get ruined. But everybody that was there now knew me and they knew I was a big freaking dork. So they could come talk to me, right? I was safe to talk to. And then the people who were running it said, thank you for doing that. It's so awesome that a participant did that. Let us introduce you. And they just introduced me to everybody that was anybody. And that's what utterly, fundamentally, completely, totally changed my life and why I'm here with you. So it's a moment like that, right? I mean, that there's a resonance between those two moments.
And beautiful to look at that. Like, it's not even a what if. It's not.
Yeah.
It's a yeah, I need to do this. You know what I mean? And you believe it so much, whatever that might be, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be getting in front of a crowd like we did.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. It doesn't. It could be anything, but yeah. And it was, you're right. I love freaking Ben Zander. He doesn't know me from Adam. It doesn't matter. I just didn't want that to not be awesome. And so when no one else jumped up, I had to, right? And you were at that game and you jumped up. And then, you got up the second time, probably in the face of the monkey mind saying, oh, come on, dude, you don't want to do that again,
Well, yeah, I mean, I didn't go to that game planning to do it. You didn't go to that.
No, I didn't. Yeah.
No, but my biggest thing, and I say this a lot, especially to young kids recently, especially during the pandemic, is what when I'm listening to you say that, I'm feeling it. I'm like in the crowd going, somebody should do something. That's what I'm thinking too.
Yeah.
Who's it going to be? And I know that if you know my background, it is going to be me, but there's a lot of times where I don't want it to be. Let other people do,
Yep.
But at the end of the day, the biggest thing that I'm listening to and taking away is the crowd wants you to
yes.
Why do you think 10,000 people turned around and looked at me? They wanted me to keep going. They were like, hey, dude, we don't know you. We don't know what you're doing, but that was fun.
Yeah. Yes.
But that was a great thing you did to elevate the experience and it changed our mood. Thank you. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So they literally and figuratively, they cheer you on. They go, hey, and that's what I think a lot of people are so afraid of, quote unquote, getting up in their life, making that, taking that chance, because they're like, well, you look stupid. Oh my God, what if it doesn't work? Oh my God, what if I fail? Right?
Yep. I mean, and you're a good, bad dancer now. Probably you weren't even as good then, right? So it wasn't that you were a professional dancer. It's that you got up and did it, right? And made it fun.
Well, that's someone asked me at an event recently, what do I, at like a social event recently, what do I do? And I looked at it with a straight face. I said, I'm an extreme dancer. And, and it opens up a fun conversation, right? I mean, that night I was an extreme dancer, an extreme risk taker, an extreme, I want to elevate. Bottom line, John, my whole life, since I was a kid, since my parents had social events and parties and all these different things, I've wanted everyone to elevate their experience at events. I've just wanted everyone to have a great time. Any girl that's ever dated me might not love me, but they're like, he's a great host. He wants everyone to do it. And I love, quote unquote, hosting these events in the sense of making.
Yeah, there you are hosting that whole half of the arena.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other side's jealous because they want to be over there with you.
But then I go over there and they're like, oh, he's here. Right.
Yeah.
And in life, I think too, where you're like, oh, I got to win the crowd over. Well, you got to win your fans over. You got to win your community over. Well, you
Yeah.
get people that will support you, and then the
Yep.
others are like, oh, hey, that's pretty cool. I want to get in on that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. That's really, really good. And you know, yeah, there's something about that thing that you feel that so that you and that I felt compelled to take responsibility for, right? And I love the saying. I love thinking about the fact that the saying is take responsibility, since usually what I feel like I'm trying to do is avoid responsibility. So why would I ever take it? But I mean, responsibility is taken, right? And it brings with it such a gift when you're willing to take responsibility for something you really care about, right? Both of our careers are a testament to that.
Yeah, and I think that in itself comes from a very genuine, authentic, all those buzzwords that were, raw,
Yeah.
like it's raw. Like, and I don't know about you, but like I try to recreate that first night at every game I go to.
Oh, dude, let's talk about it. I want to. So what I say is, I tell people, because people are always talking about practicing speeches with me, right? Or like all hands meeting things, or comments at this or whatever. And they're like, well, John, if I practice that much, it'll sound canned. And I'm like, okay, no, actually, that means you need to practice even more till you can do it so it doesn't sound canned. And then they're like, but if I do it that much, then it's going to seem like old to me, And I'm like, I call it the Jagger effect, the Jagger principle. I don't know if Mick actually does this. I'd love to meet him and talk to him about it sometime, but I've got to imagine he does, because if the Rolling Stones come and to my town and I go see them and they don't play Satisfaction, I'm going to be bummed. Come on, really? Like, come on, guys. But if they play Satisfaction, like they've been playing it since basically before I was born, and they're tired of it, that's just even worse, right? So I always remember that this is not the millionth time I've done this. This is the first time they've heard it. This is the first time we've been in this moment at this time and at this place. This is the first time.
Yeah, it's that sense of like, you don't know, I used to say, I don't know who's in the crowd. And I don't know if it's their first time, and I don't want it to be their last time. So let's special, right?
Really good.
And it's funny for a lot of my talks that I've done, I've created like a super tight, like the ones that have done really well, where it's like you said, you have an outline, you practice, and then you go up, and that's when for me, it's like all heart. I mean, obviously, it's never scripted for me, but it's all heart. And if you're all heart, which I believe my sporting events are, they feel it. You can't hide it. I'm not a mascot.
No. Yeah. Yep.
So you could still have that insane sort of practical like analysis of your speech, like so tight. But if you come with your heart, look at I've seen you too. I don't know how many times, right?
Yeah.
Dozens of times. I still feel the same thing, and if not differently, because they sing the same song in a different way, maybe, or a different story, or maybe it relates to me something different. And
you've become a different person in the meantime too.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. And I think you got to, like you said, understand, what your audience really wants. What are you bringing through? What's this ride? What's this story? And at these games, they're like, they see me and they're like, okay, he's crazy. Oh my God, that was nuts. Is he going to keep doing it? He's taking his shirts off. Mom, Dad, he's going to throw me a shirt. Oh my God, he wants me to get up. Oh my God, this is fun.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay. Oh, he's coming to our section. What should I do? Hide.
Well, what you're talking about reminds me of something that I've really come to find in my life, which is sometimes hard to embrace and hard to trust, which is that what I'm hearing you say is that you do that first thing and people will look at you like you're crazy. Then you do that second thing and they look at you like you're crazier. And then at a certain point, it turns into fun. But that whole way, you were going against a really big, strong headwind. And if you would have given up on yourself at any moment, that headwind would have crushed you. But because you keep going and you keep laying it out there and taking that risk, and then the next even bigger risk, and then quadruple the risk, and then right, and then boom, there's this breakthrough moment. And I think that's a life lesson, and it's just so powerful.
It doesn't just come overnight. I think that's one of the things that, like, as you probably work with a lot of your clients, they get on stage and it's like really good, but they want it to be great. Well, I mean, obviously we practice, but at the same time, it's just also different audiences that are listening to, experiencing.
Yeah.
I did a game, John, in England in rugby. Okay. And they had me perform before the match started, because the way rugby works, there's a video of me performing at a rugby match with 20,000 people. And it takes like about 58 seconds for a reaction from the crowd. 58,
which is an eternity.
It's an eternity.
Yeah.
And I'm dancing and I'm moving and I'm shaking, and they're looking at me like, sorry, man. And it's interesting. I should probably use that video more than the one where the crowd's going crazy.
Right. That's pretty funny, man.
But what did I do? I wanted to leave. I wanted to get out of there. Of course, I'm a human being. And I dug deep, and I kept going, and and then it became a challenge for me. Like, all right, these buggers, I'm going to get you. I'm going to win you over.
Yeah.
And within 20 minutes, I'm literally in the crazy fan pavilion. Like, picture, Friday night, 20,000 English rugby fans, and they're lifting me up their head. All right, they're like, here it comes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm over. If I quit, they're not going to buy into me. So if you quit, everyone else buy into your dreams, your ideas, your vision, right?
Right. I mean, that's what it is, right? People are they're hanging back for a second to see if you really mean it. Are you serious? Do you really mean it? Are you going to keep it up?
And for me, like, I love what you just said, because for me, it's like, yes, there's these cool big moments of like getting up in front of 18,000 or whatever. And it's like the jumbotron on you, and it's like planned, but it's like orchestrated well. But it's that one-on-one interaction where I prove I mean it, because I am so with you, because I genuinely care about your moment and your experience and elevating it for you.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And that's really wonderful.
Once you put yourself out there, you can't.
Nope. Well, and that's one of the things that I've noticed about the really, really great leaders that I've known and met and hung out with is I genuinely believe that really great leaders just love people.
Yeah, I totally agree. And and also, like, they build that sense of rapport quickly. They make you feel comfortable quickly, like the true, dynamic leaders do. And they make you feel like you got to build that trust, which is what rapport is too, right?
Yeah.
Make you feel comfortable in those situations, in those moments, and elevate you, make you shine. I mean, that's my best videos of my entire career are not of me. I know, don't be sad. They're of other people that are empowering to get up, to be crazy. From young kids to a 18-year-old boy with Down syndrome at a game with 30,000 people has 10 million views. Not because of me, because that kid said, what? Get out of the way, Big Red. I'm taking over. And he did. And it was like one of the greatest moments I've ever seen.
Great.
It's so good, and it took me, I tell people, it took me 24 years to get to that moment. And that's what it's about. It's putting that t-shirt, so to speak, and empowering you to get up, to go for it, to let loose, And I guess, like you said, that's what the leaders do. They empower you.
I think that's really true. We may be having an audio issue.
Oh, really?
Will you talk again?
Yeah. Hello?
Cool. All right. Well, I'm going to hope that got worked out. And if it didn't, I'll just apologize to everybody right now, because I don't think we're going to go redo that part. But I think that's absolutely right. That empowering the people you're leading thing, right? The bringing out their greatness and cheering them on and having their success be the thing that you're invested in. It's it's cheerleading.
Yeah. And
leading is cheerleading, right?
It is cheerleading. Yeah. It's creating an energy too, right? Where you create a positive energy around that environment that makes you, and then obviously you empower your team. And my best performances are when everyone else is in sync with the show, right? And when you are, everyone Everyone wins, It's not about the DJ, it's about the camera person, it's about the director. When all of us come together and that moment happens, it's like, wow, and you gotta trust each other too, right?
Yeah, totally. Yes, absolutely.
I remember doing the Cavs NBA finals. The camera guy couldn't find me. I'm like, I've been doing 20 games here. Like, where are you? But I had to trust it. And it took me a while. Waiting. And finally that moment happens, and then the music happens. And then you're like, okay, I got to go. And, I think that's the other thing that I think good leaders do is you adapt on the fly, right?
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah. Pom-poms or no pom-poms.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, yeah. And get focused on what you got and what you can do versus anything else. Right. So, I noticed that Jesse Cole from the Savannah Bananas is one of the quotes, one of the folks that endorses your book. I've talked with him. I've got to get him on the show. He too, I think, the reason I brought him up is because I think that there's something that I see a lot when I'm working with people on their stories and their approach and their leadership, because I think it's really key to just remember that people want to know their leaders. They want to hear those personal stories. They want to know what makes you tick. That's really important to human beings, right? And yet a lot of leaders get to a certain level of leadership because they've been so good at poker face and keeping it close to the chest and not letting anybody in, and it's all business. And that gets you to a certain point, and there could be some upsides to that. But I personally don't think that's the most fulfilling approach. But what I notice about Jesse Cole, the owner of Savannah Bananas, what I notice about you, something that I have consciously been willing to do myself, is that willingness to just step out and, for lack of a better way to say it, and I'm including myself in this, so I hope you're not offended, just step out and be a freaking dork, to give people something that they can relate to, make them feel like their dork is safe with you, right? Like, Jesse goes around in the yellow banana suit, right?
Literally, yeah. I did a podcast with him, and he's wearing a yellow tux in the podcast. And I was like, what are you doing, man?
Yeah, right. But like, once you see that, you're like, okay, number one, he's all in, number two, he's not worried about being a dork. So maybe I don't need to worry about it. And number three, he's giving, I feel like there's something just really generous, and I'm not having a very good ability to put my fingers.
Permission to cheer.
You know what? There you go. That's what I was looking for. That's exactly it. Permission to cheer.
Because
really good.
When I see what you did at the TED, and me and Jesse and other people who have there's a bit of yes, I get the concept, because when people would have probably first seen me, it'd be fascinating to hear what they would say. It'd be tough to say years later, because they'd be like, oh, well, you had something in you. We saw it. I'm like, no, you didn't know that. You were just having fun. But with the risk of sounding, and I'm not trying to be patting myself on the back, but when you were a bit of a dork and you're putting yourself out there, I'm listening to you. I'm looking at Jesse, and who I've got to know, and you, and there's a bit of a hero moment there, where the dork's saying, you know what? I'm a dork. We're all dorks. We're all human.
Yeah.
Let's just have some fun.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
Put that out there a little bit more. And Jesse, wears the yellow tux to diffuse people. I throw t-shirts, and look at me. I don't take what myself seriously. I take what I do seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine if that's why I never introduced section 108, Cameron Hughes. He's going to perform. It's going to be funny. You're going to love it. It's like, what?
Yeah.
No. So you gotta have that authentic, costume, whatever you want to call it, to begin with, and they buy into the dork. They buy into the hero image, right? That's why the videos we see online are so great, because that person's willing to do that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And Jesse has created a culture with his team and the Savannah Bananas. They did a contest to even name the team. and they just push it, constantly pushing it. And everyone is into it that he works with. They go through this crazy vetting process of their staff because he's like, if you're not coming and willing to push it with us, then we're not going to really be all on the same team.
Yeah.
And that's why they've, they sell out every game, and they, people buy into that experience. And that's a culture that, doesn't just happen overnight, but it's a mindset that's created from wearing a yellow tux and a yellow top hat and saying, go bananas enough. Right.
And like the thing that comes to mind when you say that is how much I think some people might initially resist something like that because it's not, I don't know, a proper whatever. Right. And yet that I guarantee you the Savannah Bananas and everybody on that team is more fulfilled and having more fun, and they're more financially successful because they were willing to get over that. Oh, it's not her, and I think that, I think maybe part of this conversation is I would love to bring more of this cheer and this fun and let your inner dork flag fly to corporate America and to entrepreneurs. And because I just got to believe from everything that I've seen that the most direct route to success lies through genuine authenticity, not some kind of charade for what it looks like,
Yeah, I think it's a huge point. And I think a lot of companies want that, but their leaders, at the top, it's a top down thing, right? I literally don't think I could count how many sports teams I've worked with. And, I could tell you why certain teams are successful, and I could probably predict who isn't going to be around like in minor leagues in a couple of years, because the leaders aren't creating that culture that's like, that, your athletic department works with your marketing department, which is your PR department, which works with, it's like that whole thing, as opposed to just, nope, sorry, we're just going to focus on, this without letting anyone in. And then you're like, okay, wait, then aren't we on the same team? And I think that's such a huge thing to remember, that everyone is on the same team, to lighten them, keep the mood light, especially these days, right?
Yeah.
And whatever we can do to provide that spark. I mean, that's the other thing for me is like, I've been hired by a lot of different companies to come in and do talks, or even just come in and ignite their teams.
Yeah.
And they are so scared to bring me in. They're like, what are you going to do? Oh my God. And at the end of the day, when it works, because inevitably it works, because everyone wants a little energy and a little cheer, they realize, oh, we need to do more of that. And I'm always like, it's not me, that's fine, but bring in the bananas.
Do something. Yeah.
Create that energy.
Yeah.
And, I think it's, I've worked on a lot of film sets and TV sets, and the director's the same thing. The leader sets the tone.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
So you buy into it, right? You buy into it. And I think one last thing I'll add to that is fans, John, buy into the experience you're trying to create for them. And not everything's going to work. I mean, there's books probably on all the disasters that have not worked at games. And, when you're trying to in front of 20,000 people and it doesn't work, it doesn't look great, right?
Yeah. Did that ever happen to you?
Oh, yeah, a couple of times.
I was just sitting here wondering what some of your messes are and what you learned. So will you tell us one of those messes and what you learned from it, where something didn't work and it was really embarrassing, but you learned something?
Well, yeah, there's the one that jumps out at me. I'm doing the Chicago Bulls playoff game about 4 or 5 years ago, and I'd never done a Bulls game. It's Chicago, right? United Center, 2000. Yeah. And I knew the producers well. I'd worked with them in New York. And they said they wanted me to start on the floor doing a dance contest with 3 other contestants. I'm going to win. There's going to be one guy that's from the crowd and an older guy, 75 plus, who's a plant. He's going to be wearing a full Bulls tracksuit. And then I'm going to go into the crowd and they're going to love me because I just won the dance contest. Okay? I don't want to do it. There's no part of my soul that wants to get on the court, because I just know I got to trust what I've done time and time again. So the dance contest starts. First guy goes, he's okay. Grandpa goes, and he's wearing a full Bulls tracksuit. He gets on center court, the Bulls logo on the center court, starts doing the back, like flipping and breakdancing. The crowd goes berserk. In that moment, I should have just walked off and congratulated him. Actually, it would have been a funny moment. Thinking back, I want to actually do that one day. He was so like, "There's no way I'm beating him,"
Yeah.
you know.
No.
So I go and
Yeah, totally.
I get a good reaction, and so obviously he wins, and I come off the court, and I'm like, I admittedly kind of snapped at my stage manager, going, "Well, that wasn't what was supposed to happen." So now I'm deflated, going back up into the crowd, and I'm admittedly, and I apologize to the guy. I was kind of like, "What the hell?" Like, you know,
you set me up.
Yeah. You're supposed to set me up for success, right?
Yeah.
Anyhow, so I get up into the crowd. The game's exciting. Now they're going to go to me in the stands. The guy that came second place or lost the so they go to different fans and they come to me, and now the crowd knows me, and I get up and I go nuts. The place went berserk. So I didn't handle that moment well. I trusted them.
Yeah.
I didn't really trust it, and then I had to trust it. So when I finally bought into what I do best, the crowd responded, because it actually, in hindsight, worked better that I came second.
Yeah, there you go.
Right?
There you go. Yeah. That's funny. So there's the lesson of just keep going.
Keep going, but also, like, I've worked with a lot of producers, and I literally wrote a book about it, all the different moments that you are in the moment and you're like, I don't want to do this. This doesn't feel right. And then they're like, look, this is our crowd. We know it. And you do it. And you're like, oh, thank you for pushing me. Right.
Yeah.
Thank you for, I don't want to be cheesy, but thank you kind of for holding my hand and going, Cameron, trust us on this. I've got you.
Yeah.
And some of those moments, John, are unbelievable moments for me, because they did.
Yeah. That's really cool. That's so funny. Yeah. And it is funny how, like, it seems like that was just the guy who came second, but then in a way it's almost better.
Right. I mean, you can't script that.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
The irony is they didn't know he was going to be that good. Right. So they actually,
that's so funny.
I thought it was, though.
Yeah.
Like I mean, maybe I didn't explain that part well enough to people listening, but I'm like, they didn't think he was going to be that good.
And so he just turned out to crush it and just unexpectly, that's just so hilarious.
But this is like something that I think, I'd love to hear your take on, because so much of what we think on stage and when you're working with your speakers, and I've been on stage a few times in my career, is the audience doesn't know, right? And we always, I believe, we forget that at first.
Yeah. Right? It's very easy to forget that they have no idea.
Hitting that bit, hitting that line, creating that moment. And when you can let go of that more, and I think that's a muscle that you will always work on. Right.
Yeah, totally agree.
What's your take? Like, what's your advice on that? How do you work with people on that?
Well, so the first thing is, people fundamentally don't know what you're going to do yet, because you haven't done it for them yet. Right. So if you make a mistake I used to sing in a band and I played guitar, and I'll tell you, I was in the mid range of skill, or maybe even the lower range of skill. Knew people that were way better than me, but they couldn't play a song all the way through without stopping. If they made a mistake, they would stop.
Oh, wow.
And go back, right?
Yeah.
So you're not going to, that band's not going to go anywhere.
You're a comedian. Let me try that joke again.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So I just kept going. I would screw up and keep going. And that was kind of a superpower, right? And because I screwed up so much, but I think that's kind of the thing, right? To not let that take you out in the moment, just keep going. And then the other thing I think is, this is huge for me. It dawned on me one day that I make stuff up all the time. Like, I look out at the audience and I think I know what's going on, and I don't. The guy that I thought was texting the whole time, that I almost called out, was taking notes and was my biggest fan when he raised his hand at the end. Right. And I almost insulted him. Right. And so I decided that if I'm going to make stuff up anyway, I might as well make stuff up that empowers me, you know? So I remember they don't know that I just made a mistake. And heck, maybe they think it's even better than they would have thought the other thing was, because I'm going to make it up anyway. We'll never know. Might as well make up something that empowers me.
That's a huge point, because it starts with, though, like I said earlier, though, building rapport with your audience. If your audience likes you, trusts you, and is coming along, you actually have permission to make a few mistakes that they don't even know about. We give ourselves that permission, because in the heat of the moment, the greatest speakers in the world, the greatest presenters, performers, they make mistakes, they flub up.
Yeah.
I remember seeing Chris Martin perform at Coldplay once, and he was playing his famous song Yellow. And three times in a row, the band started from the beginning at a concert with 20,000 people. By the third time, you've never heard a crowd louder, because they were like, they admitted they messed up because it was obvious.
Yeah. Right? Yeah.
They didn't want to play through it because they wanted to, give the crowd the value. And the crowd, because they owned that moment and people knew, they were like, okay, thank you for acknowledging it. And by the third time, the place was electric. And I'm telling you this story now,
just screaming for them.
He didn't keep going. So there's the opposite too of like.
That's true. That's very true.
That's the same story.
It's the same story, just from different angles, right?
With the crowd. And I've had moments where fans have attacked me from other teams, and like weird stuff happens. And the trust with the crowd, they're like, "Oh, I saw that. Sorry," or whatever it is, Or on stage where you're like, something, wacky happens, and you're like, "Oh well, keep going."
Yeah,
right?
I think that it's something that I will try to remind myself of more going forward. And I think it's something that I always tell my speakers, especially about a TED or a TEDx crowd. But I think it's really kind of true in general. If you're authentic and your heart's in the right place and you're really there to do it, like people just want you to succeed. Like it almost makes me cry. People are pulling for you if you'll just let them, right? And you feel that more than maybe anybody else in the world. You've been able to experience just how much people want you to succeed.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're putting yourself out there. And, any speaker I've ever seen, any comedian, and I used to perform for the Just for Laughs Comedy Festival, and I would see comedians that would literally like have you in tears laughing, standing ovation. I'd see other comedians, and you're just like, just didn't quite get there. But it didn't mean, the crowd still wanted them to, always.
Yeah.
You're appreciating the art of the microphone, so to speak, which is in itself, as as I know, you're being as vulnerable as you can be, right? Naked on stage in a way.
Yeah.
Which makes me want to get on stage right now. Doesn't it make you want to get on stage?
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's an amazing experience. And I think that it's, I think it, when you do that with an authenticity and a real connection to why you're there and a real desire to be there, like to be of service, to be over there with them, it's like, I guess it's like an out of body experience. It's like transcending yourself, and there's so much stuff that goes into it, right? Because it's terrifying to get noticed by the group. They might, crucify me, blah, blah, blah. So, and then to overcome that, right? Because it's never about fearless. Fearless gets you killed. It's about courage. And what you do takes a generosity of spirit and a courage that's extraordinary. And when people see that, they can't help but acknowledge it.
Yeah. And you want to just bring them for the ride, right?
Yep.
Bring them for the ride. And it's been fun to have that ride. And for me, I'm so grateful for those opportunities that, as like people give you a shot, they trust you, they put that trust in you, and you have to deliver by, owning the moment on that stage, whatever that stage is.
It's so worthwhile. Yeah. Well, Cameron, I notice it's the bottom of the hour, and I think we both have to jump. And it's been such a blast to have you. I feel like you're a soul brother. And your book is called King of Cheer, and I've got to imagine that it's available at all your favorite booksellers.
Yeah, it is, or on my website.
Or, okay, go to CameronHughes.tv. I meant to say that earlier. I don't think I did. I blew it. But CameronHughes.tv, it'll be in the show notes. Go there. You can get his book. There are stories of showing up, getting up, and never giving up from the world's most electrifying crowd igniter, Cameron Hughes. Cameron, thank you. It's been such a pleasure. I'll look forward to talking again. I think we may have to do some stuff in the future.
Big cheer.
Big cheer. Thank you for joining the Speak Like a Leader podcast. Go be awesome.